Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, and welcome to 60 Days to Success, session 4. I'm going to call this the pre-recorded version because of the holiday season. This is actually going to be a pre-recorded version. So for those of you that are tuning in after the fact, that's why you have no other audience. You just have me. So things are going really well with 60 Days to Success. Everybody's got their head down. They're turning in their trackers. They're making phone calls. So I want to address two pieces first before we jump into the geofarming, which is what we're going to go into today. And that's sort of assessing where we're at and then taking steps to move forward. So assessing where we're at, obviously we're in week 4 of this, although it's been over, I think, about 6 weeks at this point so far because of some holiday parties and some holiday sessions. So you've had some good amount of time to absorb the materials. If you haven't done it, the prior 3 are all recorded and it's out on the YouTube channel, The Well-Trained Agent, so that you can go back and revisit that. But many of you are finding out that if you put your head down and you do the work and you put the time in, you will get the results. And I've continually said over these last couple of months, being in December, this is the time where we load the pipeline. This is like the preload time. This is like loading up the ammunition so that you're ready for the big war. This is loading that pipeline, getting those clients lined up, finding out who's talking about buying or selling in 2022, 2023 or beyond, so that that pipeline is robust and strong and comes out of the gate in January and just starts right away in January, because we all know that's exactly where the market's going to be. We have not seen any kind of huge slowdown. And we all know that going into 2022, any inventory that comes on tends to get a lot of traffic. And so we need to have our buyers ready and our listings for sure ready and loaded and under contract, so that someone doesn't come in and poach them or make it easy, make a quick off-market sale or something and cut you out of the loop. So great time to do that. Most of you are trying to get between 25 and 30 people on that pipeline report, because that's what's going to get you to the production and the income that you're looking for. And as we've discussed, when you're looking for that $100,000 income and you go back to that success spreadsheet, if I have a pipeline that's 20, 25, 30 deep, then I always have people that are more active. I have some that are further out. I have some that need more nurturing, some that need less. And we never know, and this is what happens constantly, we never know when someone's going to sort of pull in faster because the right opportunity comes on the market. So you can never, that's why we need to keep that pipeline, keep in communication with everybody, make sure we're in front of them, make sure we're showing them what their options are, because you never know when they're going to potentially say, yeah, that's the one. I know I was going to move in 6 months, but let me make an action now and move for that one because that is my property. So I'm sorry, I got to keep the glasses on. I know they're reflecting, but I can't see. I'll try to position myself here so they don't reflect so much. Maybe let's see. Well, maybe not. Okay. Anyway, I'll keep them down. There you go. Little distractions. So filling the pipeline, that's our number one priority. That's what this whole focus about 60 Days to Success is. And it's really about the conversations and the actions that you're doing. How are you getting in front of people, whether it's online, whether it's in note cards, whether it's in physical conversations, whether it's in text messages. There are so many options available to us. What we want to ensure that you're doing, and you keep hearing me say over and over again, is that you have the right blend of activities to create the business that you want. All of us, it's really easy to push out postcards, push out note cards, throw flyers in the mail. Right, that's the easy activity. It takes time, it takes some money with stamps, but that's the easier activity because we don't have to talk to anybody. But the faster, more lucrative return is with those conversations. So make sure, again, I'm not them saying you don't do the postcards and all the other stuff, but make sure you're getting in front of people. Make sure you're picking up the phone. Make sure you're meeting people for coffee. Make sure you're going out and networking and social events, obviously safely during these COVID times, but getting the opportunity to be in front of people as much as possible is what will grow that business sooner than later, for those of you that are more anxious to get things going right out of the gate for 2022. So networking, note cards, doing the activities, doing the tracker. Quick reminder, what are we supposed to be doing every week? 10 conversations every day. So that's 50 conversations in the week about real estate. And again, we are in high accelerator mode because the majority of you don't have a lot of clients on your plate right now and are looking to take that to the next level. So 10 real estate conversations every day for 50 for the week, 10 note cards or handwritten communication being pushed out every week, but the 10xing that is every day and getting that up to 50, especially during these next couple of weeks when you might be a little quieter with other activities, and 10 database ads every day. So as we grow that database so that we have that base and that tool to work from to nurture even more people for our pipeline coming into 2022, you'll see great results, especially for those of you that have been doing this for these last 6 weeks. You should have 200-300 people out there. And for those of you that are newer and haven't taken advantage yet of the AdWorks campaign, once that database is at 200 people, remember, we're going to put you on that digital online campaign to make sure that your name and information and the company information is in front of them everywhere that they go on the internet, so that it just enhances that opportunity for you and reminds them that you're in the business so that they pick up the phone and call you. So keep those activities going, keep those trackers coming to both Gail and I. We know it works. Many of you have seen that in some of the other agents. People often ask me, why is so-and-so doing this? Why are some of these people at the top? Well, they've all been where you were. They've all started from where you're at, and many of them right here in the company with me. So these activities work, but you do need to be consistent and you do need to do the work. So I know it's the holiday season and some of you may be stepping back, and that's acceptable as well, obviously. But the more conversations we have and the more talking we have, the better. And keep in mind, if you are self-employed and there's nobody having you punch a clock. So if you're going to step out and have some holiday festivities with family or take some time off for yourself, put it in your calendar. Put those days off in your calendar, take them off, truly take them off, step back, but then show up back to work on that day that you're plugging back in. Because I see also that's the biggest challenge we have as being self-employed, is re-engaging, reigniting, getting things off. You don't want to lose, potentially right now, you could lose 2 to 3 weeks if we step back too far, right? And that's a big chunk out of our time for the year. So book recommendation this week. I know we've talked a lot about books and things that you can read, and over this holiday season, I think I mentioned it before, but the 12-week work year is phenomenal, because it is exactly about sort of what we're talking about and sort of how I like to operate. Put your head down, focus, do the activities, maybe even put the extra work in so that you're reaping the rewards over the other weeks and potentially not working as hard. And they say, and I believe this, successful people know how to do that, put their head down and achieve what they're looking for over a couple of months so that they can build that base and then go from there. So, all right, so let's talk plan of action for geofarming, or sort of our next step or our next introductory topic. So what is farming? What does that look like? Let's talk about who would be on that farm. How do you build that? And what types of activities will you do with that farm going forward? Because this is sort of a very big topic. So farming, first of all, means, for many people, it means planting seeds, right? Planting seeds to harvest so that you get a crop. Well, it's the same thing in real estate. It's planting the seeds and starting to build that base so that you can get a crop of business. And what we're going to do with a farm is, and not everybody does this, by the way. In fact, it's not something I did a lot of in my career because I was getting so much referral business, but I've also seen people extremely successful with this. We've got some agents, even within our offices, that farm and do most of their business in a very small geographical area, or in a building, or in certain neighborhoods. So keep that in mind. This can be a very strong base to build off of. So a farm means that you identify and or start to identify an area. A geo farm is a geographic area, so an area that you would like to farm. Now, I mentioned that can be a building, folks that live within a certain building, or they want to target a certain building or an area, will start to farm that. It can be neighborhoods. It can be an area of a town or a community or a city. I would say the majority of these tend to be very focused. So when you're starting to identify the farm and where you want to work, you need to think long-term, because this is not something you're going to do just for this year and then work a different area. The beauty of the farm is that you start to build your name as the go-to person within that area, within that community, within that pool of people. And that comes from consistency and actions that you're going to do over the course of the year. Now, will you reap the benefits of that right out of the gate? Not always. So that is really the piece of the farm, is about building and harvesting and nurturing, and again, getting that crop down the line, because you've spent the time building those relationships and becoming the go-to expert for that area. So the first exercise that you want to do is identify what area you want to call your farm. I would strongly suggest not starting too big, because again, there's going to be actions, and we'll talk about this, that we're going to want to do going forward, and there's some expense involved in that. So you don't want to start off with a farm of 1,000 people fresh out of the gate and then need to maintain that, and so that you actually don't maintain it and walk away. it's better to start with a farm. And I tell people, even if you start with 100 people or you go to 250, I probably wouldn't go much over 250 right out of the gate, so that you can work it properly and actually, start to reap something from that. So you want to start by identifying what is that area. Is it a neighborhood? Is it 100 people around where I live? Is it a certain building? Is it just a set of streets, or a sub community? Like when you go into Boston, you have things like Hyde Park and Roslindale, but then you have neighborhoods. So would it be a certain section of that? Is it a certain village or two villages in Newton that you want to start to create from, or probably a village if you're talking about 100 to 250? Or is it, a certain, in a particular area? And again, I would stick to the GeoFarm piece of this, but it potentially also could be, if you're moving into the city, a certain type of property. So this could be potentially that I'm targeting multifamilies within a certain radius area so that I can target those investment folks. So your first job is to identify your farm. Now, I would suggest that your farm is something you know and can speak of, and they're either living in that community or very active in that community, so that you can connect with those folks, relate to them, but also see them even outside of things that might be tied into the real estate farming piece. Okay. So, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze here. Once we have an idea of what we would like to do, then we need to start to create our list so that we can upload that farm into Sage and have a database. And again, I would categorize these folks as a farm so that these are not necessarily people I have personal relationships, but I'm working to build that with them. And this is the farm that I'm going to be targeting. We've mentioned in the past how you can build lists to start to target market and do things too. So you have those resources available to you. Remind through the MLS system has a program called Remind, and then we use Remind Pro in the office. So you can, if you're going to pick a point and go around that point to stick to your neighborhood, you can send an email to the newton.admin@commonmoves.com. Tell them you would like a client list, from 100 Main Street, Arlington, Mass. I want 100 names around that in a circumference, or I want 200 names around that. That's a quick farm. You can identify, and many of our agents have done this, identify certain streets where they want to start to target. And so they can download the list again for you that way by saying, pick these streets and start with that, but go up to 100 people. And again, this is going to be something that you'll do ongoing maintenance with. So there will be some work involved as you go forward in terms of cleaning this up and perfecting this so that you have more information on everybody. So Remind Pro is probably, or Cold Directory, both of them would work. The Cold Directory you could do yourself through your sign in through Berkshire Hathaway Commonwealth. So build your list first. That's where we want to start. And you do not need to start genetically from just square zero. Download it from somewhere that you have that information and start to build from there. Okay. And get them up into Sage, categorize them so I know that that's my farm. Now, once I've identified that list, I need a plan of action. You should be, I'm going to say, communicating with, interacting with the farm a minimum 4 times a year, but I would say ideally for most of you, that's going to be 6 times a year. So every 2 months, I should be doing some action. And I'll go through what I mean by that, because you want varied action to that farm. I want you to keep in mind as you're building this, because many people will start this process and they'll say, oh, I've gone all year, I haven't gotten a single thing out of my farm. Remember, it takes 7 times on average for someone to see your name before they start to register, oh, this person's a real estate agent. They're really good at what they do. This is the person I should call. So that first mailing or that first visit or that first call doesn't always pay off. But this is, remember, and it should be your focus around the farm always, this is around building relationship. And relationship comes from offering value to someone. So being able to be valuable and offer them the things they might be looking for, or being, an information point in this process can be very helpful. So we're going to identify our list, get it uploaded into Sage so that we have sort of that stepping off point. And now we're going to make a plan. Now, there's a list of things we can do to interact with our farm, and there's no right or wrong way. And either Gail or I are happy to sit down with you and sort of make out that marketing plan or that plan of action with your farm, whether it's over the next year or the next 2 years, so that you sort of know this is the way I'm going to go at that. Now, before I dive into some of those actions, one thing I would also recommend that you incorporate into this is any online way that you can start to connect with these folks, if it's at all possible. So let me give you an example. Many times in communities, there's exclusive Facebook pages started, and may not be. So that may be an opportunity to start something where you drive everybody into one place. You create the community within the neighborhood. You become sort of that person that's built that, but that also gives you that hold into the neighborhood. And a lot of agents have very successfully done that in the past, where they've set up, in Westford, we had the Hitchin Post neighborhood. So someone set up the Hitchin Post neighborhood Facebook group. Everybody gets in there. It becomes a community page. It's not just about real estate. It becomes a page where neighbors can talk or ask for things or ask for help or talk about neighborhood events going on or neighborhood yard sales or all kinds of things. It becomes that community, but it becomes a venue also to have, that sort of access to help people that might need help, whether they need painters or movers or stagers, or they say, can you recommend a good real estate agent? Well, obviously when you're on there and your name's been in front of them, that makes it an easier conversation. So you're going to want to look for online activities that you can plug into. So Facebook communities, that Next, I think it's called Next Door or Next Neighbor. It's the green one. I think Next Door, I think it's called. App is very community based. You actually have to prove that you live within that area to be part of that. But that's, many times I've been in there on mine and I see conversations about real estate. Who do you know? Who could come out, give me a free evaluation for price? And so that becomes an excellent pool for communicating, but also coming from value. So I do want you to keep in mind, I think you've heard me say this a number of times now, coming from value is so, so important. Even with our other clients outside of the farm, but when we can show up and be of assistance when someone needs help with something like painters or movers or carpet installation or whatever it is, or they're looking for a specific type of service or person, and we can come from value and offer up some of our team to them. Again, that just helps us establish more of a relationship with those folks and help to move things even a little bit further, right? So back to our GeoFarm, we have our list in, we have it set up in Sage, we have it identified as our GeoFarm. There's a number of things that you can build here to sort of communicate and become part of that community. So it involves all of the things we talk about with prospecting. It involves phone calling, it involves mailing, it involves pop by and play in person things, and eventually even maybe hosting neighborhood type of events. So, it can lead into all ways of networking. So that's where you start to make out the plan. What is my plan of action? Here are some of the things that we could potentially do with that farm, and feel free to be creative with this. So let's start with mailing stuff. So depending on what you have for information, obviously in the end, we always want, like we want with our entire database, 3 components. We want address, we want email, and we want a cell phone number. Because by having those 3 components, it allows us to communicate in different ways and reach out to potentially that, someone who might not be checking their email on a regular basis. If we text something, they may get that. So we want multiple ways to be able to try to communicate with people. And so as you work that farm, which is what you're going to start to do, you're working to get those 3 components. So start to think about, like, if I don't have a lot of email addresses, for example, but I have phone numbers. Well, maybe I start by calling, introducing myself. I'm not going to say I'm geofarming your neighborhood. I'm just going to say I'm a local realtor, and we've got a lot of buyers looking in your area, and I'm wondering if you wondered what price would you sell your house. Start to build that relationship. What you're looking for in that first conversation is an opportunity to offer value again, something that they might be helpful to them. So maybe they say, I'm not looking to sell right now. Well, would it be helpful to you to stay in touch with the current market conditions and what's going on and what your neighborhood sales look like? I do have a newsletter that I send out on a quarterly basis, and I would love to include you on that if you'd like to see what the neighborhood sales were, what the town sales were, and just keep plugged in. Would you like to be on that? A lot of people will say yes. And so that now gives you an opportunity to take their email and upload your, enhance or continue to fill in your database for that farm. Maybe they don't want to do that. Again, continue that conversation. It might take a few times to do that, but you don't want to just ask people for their email. They're not going to give it to you. But if you're offering something of value that's of interest to them, then they will share their email. You may create a landing page that you send out to the neighborhood and sort of get a market update from me, or get, here, click here to get all the local sales in the town from the past 6 months or the past year, or the local market assessment, or where the 2022 real estate market's going. That landing page would have them put their name, cell phone, and email address in it so that you have that information collected as a helpful way as well, right? So other ways that I've gotten the email address when talking to someone is they start to say, well, we really need to do some projects. We need to paint before we put it on the market. We need to start to declutter. We need to start to sell off some things. We need to replace the carpets, whatever that is. Again, I would love to share some of the resources I have available on my team. If you want to, could I get your email address, and I will happily email you over a couple of my contacts that you could reach out to that I think would be of help to you. So again, as opposed to just offering up that information right on the phone and losing that opportunity, always think about where do I need to go to sort of build out that record so that I can go forward and really work that farm potentially. Because ideally down the line over the first year and a half, as you're going to continue to add to your farm, but that base of folks that you initially added are rounded out with all three components. So we always want to think in terms of how do we do that, okay? So phone calling is a great way to start right out of the gate. Postcard, some kind of postcard mailing or a letter that addresses something, maybe a market update where you send out the market update to that farm so that maybe I don't have all the phone numbers. And so I need to start to communicate that way to try to encourage people to email me or call me to get more information. So that comes again from being of value. So postcards, maybe with a market update or some of your recent sales from the past year, or some kind of letter talking about the market and where it's going to go and how you have a team that can help them maximize the return on their house. Usually that's our first form. Again, it doesn't have to be because it depends on what that database looks like, but that's another option to have our first connection with folks. But make sure you have that call to action. So one of the things a lot of agents miss is they push out the postcard, they push out that letter, but there's no call to action. There's no request of you showing how you can come from value and help them if they would just reach out to you. So because at that point I'm a little locked, right? I don't have their information enough to reach out to them. So I want them to reach out to me. So I have to entice them to do that by offering something of value. And again, Gail and I are happy to talk through some different ideas with you or sort of vet your ideas. If you think, oh, what about this? Would this be a good way to get people in action? Because we've both seen a lot of things in the field that have worked and haven't worked. So another great opportunity when you're working a farm, and one of the other things that you'll want to add in at some point, even if it's not right out of the gate, is pop-bys. So having an area where you go into the neighborhood, and again, the weather might be a little challenging up in the Northeast right now to do some of this, but you never know. You also find, during a snowstorm, people are always home. So if that's your local neighborhood, that's not a bad opportunity sometimes to, I used to put cookies and the little kids on the sled and go around and meet the neighbors because I was on a mission to meet the neighbors. Some kind of activity like that where you're actually meeting people. That can be, again, want something to give them. So not just handing them a business card. So whether that's a marketing piece, whether that's a door hanger, or whether it's a cute little seasonal pop-by. At Halloween, we talk about little pumpkins. This time of the year, it's New Year's. If for those of you looking for great pop-by ideas, all you have to do is Google real estate pop-by ideas, and there's a ton of them out there. So for right now, I might Google real estate pop-by ideas for New Year's, and I'm sure there's all kinds of things that are, not super expensive, easy to do, but will get somebody's attention. I know one of them utilized recently was a little package of extra gum. I don't know if you've seen the little extra gum, and it has a cute little tag printed out with your stuff on it that says, I always go the extra mile for my clients. And so you tie something in with that, and it's a cute little reminder of who you are and how you're there to serve them. Obviously, having that opportunity to meet somebody face-to-face, introduce yourself, pass along your business information is invaluable, because then as you start to email or call them, they recognize your name. And again, this is really what we're trying to do, get them to recognize your name and you be the go-to person. Something that ties back into all of this a little bit, and again, it's a consideration. We talked about the online component, and one thing I did miss when we talked about that, because we talked about Facebook or the social platforms or the next platforms where you're sort of able to be community focused. The other component of that is you may consider even building like a community website, or a place where people could go if they don't have something like that. Maybe it's a community where there's not a lot of social media action or a lot of people getting onto social media. So maybe you become the go-to website for the neighborhood. So I mentioned Hitch and Post neighborhood in Westford. So maybe it's hitchandpost.com. And as I start to meet people, I say, oh, check out the website. We'll be posting, and maybe, again, you want to have a place where they can communicate back to you, but we'll be posting community events, and we'll be posting community wants and needs, and I'll put the local market, the real estate marketing update out there. Would you like to register to join? Make that website a locked website, so somebody needs a membership. And again, that's a way to collect the information, but also maintain that the folks that are on that website actually belong within that community. So many ideas, isn't there? There's just so many components to this, and that's why it's so important to make a plan. So we're talking about the Popeyes, putting something together where you can go face to face. As you start to collect the database and you're going to start to communicate, we have mail. So that's postcards. You could mail newsletters. I know we have agents that mail real estate magazines with updates that are customized to themselves. You can do postcards. You could do holiday cards. So there's all kinds of components you can put in the mail. The next piece is email. If you do have a good selection of email addresses or you're trying to build that piece up of it, again, newsletters, there's a lot of collateral material out on BHHS resources. If you go into the marketing and then you go into the marketing tile, and then you go into marketing, promoting myself, you'll find all kinds of components out there. And again, remember, it's social media stuff. There's newsletters, there's videos. Email also is a great tool, if you will, for you to start to shoot your own personal emails. So we've talked about in the past, one of the best ways to build relationship with folks is to be in front of them, actually see them talking to you, whether it's live or a recording like this one, and start to establish that. So as you start to get a better collection of emails, as opposed to putting in a flat email market update, shoot a video, put the video embedded within the email so that they actually click and start to get to know you and see you. I always recommend, linking that into like a YouTube channel so that you're starting to collect those folks. Maybe you have a YouTube channel that's that neighborhood. And so all the video stuff can go out in one place and you can point people to that direction, right? All about building community. You're trying to attract a community, but what you need to do is be building the community, okay? And starting to tie those people into you as the resource and go-to, but also even tie them into each other. To be of service that way is what's going to really add value. So again, back to the email, video, newsletters, market updates, but again, keep them informative, keep them helpful, come from value. I know I say that a lot, but honestly, if you think of what value does this have to someone, is this only serving me and my business, or is this going to potentially serve the client as well? Then if it's going to serve the client more than it's going to serve me, the higher probability I'm going to have that they're going to come to me for things, ask me questions, look for more resources from me. I become that go-to person. This is where I always want to say any questions, any thoughts, and get your input. So a little tricky when I do these pre-recordeds because I don't get that interaction that I so love with everybody. So recap, we have pushing out mail, we have email, and we have phone calling, right? And so we want a combination of those events so that we're not hitting people. You don't want just 4 postcards to go out for the year and think that you're properly farming that harvest. It's kind of like planting the seeds and, not watering. I'm just going to throw the seeds in and just see what happens, or just keep, throwing more seeds in, right? We want all the components to build that farm and enhance that farm and to try to help us build that community. Okay. Trying to think of what else is really important here. One other piece I'd sort of point you back to, because we are talking about community and influencing with the geofarming more so than anything. The IQ training that we've done, that's also out there on the Well-Trained Agent Recorded, has a lot of focus around the online, kind of goes a little bit deeper into the online community building stuff and building your influence and coming from value. So if for those of you that struggle with the online portion or could use some additional help and pointers, I'd point you back over to that as well to plug into and maybe take advantage of. So that's the farm piece. The end goal with the farm piece is to build the community, become that influencer in that community, become that go-to person in the community, and communicate with them on a regular basis. As I mentioned, 4 to 6 times a year and on an ongoing basis. Many, many times that farm is not going to pay off until you're into year 2, maybe even year 3, depending on how well you're working that. And as it gets even bigger and as your business gets bigger, then you can even enhance it with community events. You can have client appreciation parties or client parties where you we've had people do food trucks into the neighborhood, or, invite them all to a movie theater, or, a special wine tasting, or a kids event, like a fair or something. But you can start to do even more active activities to be in front of those folks on a regular basis as you start to build some traction in that community. So again, make sure you're thinking long-term when you're building this. This is not a fast decision where, you want to be somewhere where you live, or a very active. Maybe it's some folks, it's an old neighborhood where they grew up. Some folks, it's where they actually live now. For some people, it's where they're heading, but, they're very plugged into that community. And so that, it helps you not just be the person that's hitting them with mailers, but be the person that can really understand what's going on. So I'm going to share a couple of stories, because there's, as always, there's better ways to do things, right? There's better ways to get traction. And many of you know, I own property down in Florida, and, with that neighborhood, that's obviously like the Massachusetts market, it's crazy. The prices have appreciated. There's a ton of people looking to purchase all the time. And it's interesting because I get more material from down there than I've ever gotten at any property I've ever owned, which is interesting. But I do get material from, I'll get occasional random pieces from people. And those people, I couldn't even tell you right now who they are. But I could tell you there's two people that on a regular basis I get things from. And they come from service. They send out what the recent sales in the neighborhood are. I recently got a note in the mail, and they said, oh, there's a couple of neighbors that are going to be putting it on the market, because they know a lot of folks in the neighborhood have friends that want to purchase in, or maybe want to buy another property in the community. That's of huge value. Right now, you feel like you're getting access to something that isn't available to everybody else. I also they've sometimes given us pieces on the whole area market. So how is the neighborhood faring against some of the other local neighborhoods, and how does that compare? And again, especially for someone like myself that's not in that community or living there all the time, it keeps me plugged into the market, and I find that highly valuable. I can tell you, even though I don't always read them, I could sit here right now and tell you those two realtors' names and the companies they work for, because they've been so consistent. And so if something were to happen and I needed to sell for whatever reason, very likely that one of those two people would be, or both of them would be, the people I would reach out to get that market analysis on and start to have that conversation with. That's what you're trying to build. You're trying to build that you're that go-to person, especially even if someone has someone in their network, but they feel like, well, this person really knows the neighborhood. And as you start to build that farm and you start to do more sales in it, one of our agents very effectively works one building in the Natick market. It happens to be where she lives. She does an excellent job at maintaining relationship with everybody within the building. She's very involved within the building. She's been very consistent in her mailings. All her business comes from that. So then that adds into other things you can do, which is the update in the building and, what the sales were. And she can promote, because those are all her sales. She can promote how much of the high percentage of business that she does in that building. And as hard as some other people try to come into that building, and I know she occasionally gets frustrated because she'll feel like, oh, this person's in this, they don't know the building. She tends to get that back, because again, they come in and they don't know the building the way she does, and they can't service those clients the way she can. So she does stand out, and people will ultimately, and they do, they appreciate that. And they know there's real value in that. So I think that's probably my theme for today. Value, add value. Anywhere we can add value, anywhere we can, help people get to where they want to go and achieve their goals, we know that's where you become the successful agent. If we sit back and worry only about our paycheck or only about what's in it for us, ultimately, you might make a few checks, but it won't be sustainable. This relationship's very heavily built on relationship, the network we have, and how we add value, how we be of service to folks, because people will appreciate that, and people will refer you from that, and people will come back to you for questions and ask you for help as they go through that process, right? So that was more condensed version today because we don't have everybody on here interacting. So hopefully for this holiday season, you've enjoyed our pre-recorded version so that you can start. What I wanted you to do over this next couple of weeks as you're going into the holiday season is, utilize this time when you have a little extra time and start to develop the farm, start to build that list, get it into Sage, start to perfect it. And at this point, you just reach out. Maybe your first action is a Happy New Year. So whether that's a pop-by, whether that's a nice Happy New Year card, just to start the ball rolling, but start to think about how do you point people to you, whether it's through a Facebook group, join our neighborhood Facebook group to stay into the current happenings, right? Send me a request and I'll invite you in. That way that community stays connected, or whether it's you're pointing them to a website where they're going to register, or whether it's, reaching out to you with a phone call because they're looking for the market update of the service. You want to try to get them into action. So always keep that in mind. Any of our communications, mailings, things that are going out, always ask yourself, what is my call to action? What have I added for value and what's my call to action? What have I asked them to do, or what information have I given them so that they can at least reach out to me? So I've enjoyed spending this time with you. I hope you enjoy your families during this holiday season. We will pick back up again. I believe the date is January, let's see, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, January 5th for our next session. If there's any change to that, we will communicate. But as always, Gail and I are available and here to help you. So you want to talk through your plans as you start to develop them, or run them by us, or ask for additional help or hints or tips, always available to do that. So happy holidays, everybody. Happy New Year. And we appreciate you, and we look forward to seeing you in the new year and watching you soar in 2022 in real estate.